angels waging war in the unseen realm. Global events fulfilling biblical prophecy. Eternal life. What lies beyond mortality? From analyzing the paranormal from a biblical worldview to the discussion of cutting-edge science and technology, conspiracy, discovery, special investigative reports. Unafraid to explore the challenging issues facing humanity. Welcome to another edition of SkyWatch TV.
Sometimes when you're doing research into a controversial topic, the evidence points in a direction you wish it hadn't, or wish it didn't. But if you're honest about it, you present the evidence regardless of where it points. Welcome to SkyWatch TV. This is a web exclusive program, one that you won't see on the network television broadcast, and we're bringing it to you in quite a hurry, bypassing our normal production time in order to get this to you right away. The other day, I got a phone call from L.A. Marzulli. He had something important to share, and so we very quickly set up a Skype connection in my rudimentary home studio in order to discuss the latest information that L.A. Marzulli and Richard Shaw, the producers of the Watchers DVD series, had just discovered about the so-called winged nightmare, the demon fairy, the creature that L.A. featured in its presentation at the recent Rocky Mountain International Prophecy Conference. So you and Richard Shaw have had several interesting days after getting your hands on this artifact, the winged demon, the winged nightmare, the fairy, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
What have you learned?
Well, first of all, let me do a little bit of backstory. You know, at the Prophecy Watchers Conference that was pretty much sold out, standing room only, and you did a great presentation there also, Derek. Kudos to you, sir. And, you know, I stood on the stage and I spoke to a packed room of people and said, look, and I showed pictures of his thing. You know, here it is. And the best of our knowledge, you know, we believe that the thing is real. The fairy, the creature, the winged nightmare, whatever you want to call it, we believe it's real. And here's why. Right before that, and this is right before the release of Watchers 10 and also the book Nephilim Hybrids. This is about 4 months ago now, maybe 5 months ago. I did a sit down one-on-one with a veterinarian, local veterinarian. And all I had at the time were the x-rays that Jaime Maussan, who's the owner of the creature, had given me. Jaime Maussan has a huge program down in Mexico City. Millions of people watch his program. He's like a national celebrity down there, all on the whole UFO phenomenon. And that's how we discovered this thing. Jaime, we were in Jaime's office. He reached up behind his desk. There was a cabinet, opened the cabinet door, took down this jar, and in the jar is this thing. And we're looking at it going, oh my gosh, you know, what is it real? And it looked real. And I mean, it still looks real. I mean, we're just going. And you remember, this thing was suspended in like a formaldehyde solution. The day we were there, we spoke to a geneticist who did testing on it. So we had all this backstory, and we sat on it for 3 years. But we still weren't sure because of the bird shot. We now know it's bird shot throughout this creature's body. What the heck is that doing there?
Right.
And, you know, we were leaning, is it a hoax? Is it real? Whatever. So this meeting that I had with the veterinarian, he looked at the x-rays. So now I've got a vet, a guy who's trained in anatomy, looking at the x-rays, and he goes, and we have the audio, it's in the film and in the transcripts in the book, and he goes, you know, it sure looks real to me. And that's what we went with. That's what we went with. Right. Based on, and I'm not putting the onus on the vet here, but that's, you know, you go to professionals because I don't know. You know, I'm a researcher. I'm trying to bring what we're finding out to the folks, but you know, we didn't know. And I said this at Prophecy Watchers, up to the vet, you know, my hoax meter needle was like over here on the hoax side. And when the vet weighed in, it moved over, okay, and that's why we went with it. Right. So, and I also stated in the book, in the Prophecy Watchers article, and you know, many performances or radio shows that we've done, we don't know what this thing really is. More testing needs to be done. Which brings us to the present day. The more testing. More testing has been done. Mm-hmm. And what happened was Javier Martinez, who's Jaime Maussan's manager, was able to bring the creature across the border in the formaldehyde liquid. Now, we're not doing anything illegal here. It's just it's a creature. It's like a little insect in a thing. Nobody said anything, and we bought it in Los Angeles. So this is about a week ago. It came in here, and last Saturday, we went to a veterinarian's. I had lined everything up, a different veterinarian. There were 2 veterinarians there at the time, and at least 1 assistant. Sometimes we had 2 assistants helping with what was going on. So we were all, drum roll please. They knew, they didn't know what this thing looked like, but they knew that they were into something. We gave them a sizable fee, which we offered, and that's what opened the door to do this. And so before I get to the punchline here, we've spent upwards of $5,000 on testing this thing. So it's not like we're treating this thing lightly. I mean, it's hard money. We spent $5,000 to try to vet this thing. So now we're spending more money to try to vet the thing, no pun intended. And we're with the vets, and there's 2 of them. And we take the creature out, and everybody's going, oh my gosh, the vet looks at me and goes, it looks like a demon. I go, yeah, I know, and we take it, we have new x-rays on this thing, and it's all on film. We'll show that soon. It's all on film. The vet's looking at this thing. The first thing he does is he goes to the pelvic girdle area, and he goes, this looks weird to me. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, the way the femurs are attached, it just doesn't look right. They should, they're attached underneath. They should be to the sides. It's just, something's wrong here. And then I say, well, could that be because, look at all the bird shot, maybe it blew the pelvic girdle apart? And he goes, yeah, that may be what we're looking at. Maybe the bird shot kind of blew the whole thing apart. So that's kind of what we went with. And we're doing, he goes in and very carefully, the heart and lungs were still in this thing. We took the heart and lungs out of it. We were going to do DNA testing. We did confirm that it was bird shot. We took the bird shot out. I mean, we're all looking at this thing. One of the arms had come out. We're looking at that under a microscope. We took hair samples. I mean, we did everything you can possibly do. We still have the little vials of all the DNA samples we were going to send up to the lab. So this is, we're doing due diligence. We're with the vets, and both of these people go, and I asked them, I said, if this thing was going to fly based on the wing structure, would it fly horizontally or upright? And they both said upright. And that was a whole discussion. So we're all talking about this thing, and everybody in the room at this point believes that the creature is real. So about 2 hours go by, and remember, this thing's been submerged in a solution of alcohol, and now it starts to dry up. And as the skin begins to dry up, it begins to shrink. And as it begins to shrink, we begin to see things that shouldn't be there. Now, let me back up for a second. When we first took it out, Jaime Masson had told me, it's LA, we've got to put it in new solution. There's little white spots that are showing on the creature. Well, what are those? So we look at this thing, knowing about the bird shot, we thought, well, that's, it's calcification on the bird shot, because we saw some of these little eruptions. Now these eruptions had grown much, much bigger. And in fact, the detached arm area, the skin completely evaporated, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. The creature's laying in front of me on an examination table in the vet's in a tray. Okay, Richard's over at the microscope looking at one of the legs and is marveling at the fact that there are claws and there's hair on this thing, and oh my gosh, we're still wondering about the stinger. Right. But we're all like on the same page. I'm looking at the creature. It's a couple hours into the thing. The skin is definitely shrunk, and I see something underneath the creature. And it's blue. And I reach down and I pick it up and I go, what's this? And I hold it to the vet. And he goes, that looks like a matchstick or a toothpick. And that's glue on the end of it. And at this moment, then we look down at the other arm, and sure enough, that calcification thing, and it was the same blue glue, whatever that was. And I ran over to Richard and I'm going, Rick, it's a hoax. And Richard's going, not now, not now. I'm looking at this thing on the microscope. Richard, it's a hoax. No. I'll get and like 3 times. Richard, it's a hoax. What? I mean, he finally comes out of his, and who wouldn't be? He's looking at a microscope to this thing, right? Thinking, wow, this is unbelievable. And at that point, we went back now we're all clustered around this thing. We went back to the x-ray, and very plainly on the x-ray, you can see this. And hold on, I want to just show you something. Okay. And this is what's important. And remember, 3 veterinarians, Derek, were fooled. 3 veterinarians were fooled. So, all 3 think it's real. here's where everybody went off the rails. See this area right here?
Yeah.
This is the upper arm. You notice the way the radiograph shows the bone here?
Yeah.
The upper arm, it doesn't show it. And then you see a blob here and a blob there. Same on this side.
Right.
That's the glue and the wood. And once we saw that, then we were off to the races. Then we looked at the creature and we found an armature, which I'll show you in a second. The armature is right there. And you can see it. It goes like this. And we realized this armature was plastic and connected the pelvic area to the skull. Now, when we saw this, we weren't jumping up and down going, hooray! The wind were taken out of our sails. Sure. Because we realized, and by the way, Jaime Maussan spent $10,000 to buy the creature. Oh. From the people who found it. We realize now that the entire story of the kid and everything else is all part of the elaborately staged ruse. Somebody made $10,000 off this thing. It's an elaborate hoax. And we're sitting there going, oh my gosh, we couldn't believe it. And I called Jaime on the phone. Jaime's going, no, Marzulli, you've got to go to another vet. We've got to make sure. It's got to be real. And I'm going, Jaime, it's not. And I give the phone to Javier Martinez, and Javier backs us up on this. We're looking at, these pieces of wood with the glue stick. So I immediately got home. We were all kind of bummed out. I sent out emails to 3 or 4 different zoologists because that's what we needed at this point. Right. What are we looking at here? And today I just returned from Santa Barbara. I went up to the Santa Barbara Natural History Museum. I spoke to a man who's a zoologist named Paul Collins, along with one of the curators also up there. They took us into the back room. This guy, Derek, is the Superman of zoologists, in my opinion. I mean, this guy had bat skulls, everything right there, all these different bones of pictures of different bats. And he said, this is and we just dissected the whole thing. Oh, here's the plastic armature. Now look at the way they moved the skin over here and the x-rays. This is glue. I mean, he was all over this thing like white on rice. And he basically dissected the entire creature right in front of us. Oh, here's the tail, the normal tail, and right here is a little bump which shouldn't be there. And this is where they added what looks like a stinger, which is actually the claw of probably a squirrel. Wasn't sure on that, but the legs of a bat, and it just goes on and on and on. And I asked him, I said, how many hours? And he said, well, this is probably done by a taxidermist, someone like that. If it's not his first rodeo, he could do it very quickly. However, if it is his first rodeo, I mean, you're looking at, maybe 40, 50 hours to make something like this. I mean, it's not, and we look at the skull, right? And I mean, you look at the skull, and again, he's looking at the radiographs, and we're peeling back some of the skin. He goes, here's where the ears are attached to the skull. Here's where they added some sort of plastic, like, putty or whatever, or glue to the skull to shape it. I mean, a very, very elaborate, expertly crafted hoax that fooled 3 veterinarians, Jaime Maussan, Richard Shaw, L.A. Marzulli, and everybody else who looked at this thing. For the most part, a few people were skeptical. And, I mean, look, we just went with the evidence that was given to us at the time. And when the vet who studies these things, I mean, that's what he does, looked at the radiograph and he thought it was real. And the other 2 vets who looked at the x-rays, they thought it was real. I'll just pull this up again. I mean, they thought it was real. So, okay, so we're looking at all this stuff and everybody's on the same page until the last minute when the skin dries up enough, revealing the glue and the wood. And I'm actually working on a short book, and we'll have interviews with everybody, so it's all detailed. It's called, and I got Gary Stearman has given me the title of the book, Anatomy of a Hoax. Double entendre there. Yeah. Anatomy of a Hoax. And I think, we need to do this. We need to blast this out. Jaime's going to do the same thing because people need to understand, we all do, that as researchers that are really into this stuff. And look, we've interviewed, hundreds of people? I've interviewed hundreds of people in my lifetime for different books, for the Watcher series and everything else. This is the first time that we've actually had to come out with and sort of retract and take a step back and go, Well, you know what, folks? We got fooled. We got fooled. You know, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. I mean, what am I supposed to say? You know, it's like next time, and, you know, fool me once, that whole thing, fool me twice and once. But next time we come up with something like this, we've learned our lesson. And, you know, the school of hard knocks, I mean, I get it. But, I mean, how many other people would have done the same thing? I don't know. Well, but, you know, we apologize for anyone who was sort of taken in. We were all taken in. And here's the latest. And as I stated earlier, you know, more testing needs to be done. This is the more testing.
Right.
It is a hoax.
Now, one of the things that was really interesting about Watchers 10 and this artifact obviously attracted a lot of attention and maybe detracted or distracted people from one of the other really interesting findings that you depicted in Watchers 10, which is the DNA result from the skull that you tested in Oregon, which originated in Peru, but it was in a collection in Oregon when you had it tested. Talk about that and why that was significant.
Well, that is hugely significant, along with the hair samples that Brian Forrester and Senior Juan Navarro allowed us to, you know, get out of Peru, which you were allowed to do legally. All those samples pointed to all the hair, all the big elongated skull from Peru that was in a private collection. They all tested Middle Eastern European origin. And this is what, you know, the fairy, the creature, the hoax kind of usurped that in some way.
Right.
It took the attention off the DNA and moved it to the ruse, unfortunately. What this does, and I'm going to make a statement here, which I'm not going to retract later on, because we've got 5 different DNA tests that we've done. 5 different DNA tests. And if you want to read the DNA report, it is in verbatim. It is in the back of the book, Nephilim Hybrids, verbatim from Lakehead University. We also have a geneticist who tested the La Roja skull. That's the one we're talking about. And the haplogroup from that was T2B, which originates in Turkey, Syria, Mesopotamia, basically the Middle East. Why this is hugely important in academic circles and the scientific community, the scientists tell us, the Darwinians tell us, the Darwinists tell us that at the end of the last ice age, there was a land bridge between Asia and Alaska. The Bering Strait, which is there now, a waterway, was dry land. They call it the Beringian Land Bridge. And at the end of the last ice age, people came over from Asia and trickled down through the Americas. Okay, I get that. That more than likely happened. But we have stated from the get-go that we believe these elongated skulls and other artifacts that we find originate from the Middle East. And maybe, and I'll underline this, maybe the remnants of the Nephilim. We don't know yet. More testing needs to be done. How many times have we heard that? Yeah. But the initial DNA report that Brian Forrester reported years ago, which we did not have access to, was very telling. This is in your face. Now, what's interesting about this, out of the 3 labs that we worked with, only 1 would come on the record. That was Lakehead. Right. The other 2 would not come on the record. The one that tested the hair wrote a report, but there's no letterhead on it and there's no signatures on it. Everybody's afraid to touch this stuff because it's woo-woo. And I get that. I understand that. Yeah. So here we are, you know, trying to probe in to something which is enigmatic. And of course, you know, it's just as unfair to say that all these skulls were cradle headboard. Well, how do you know that? How can you make such a broad judgment like that? That's just an unfair statement. While some of them were cradle headboarded, where you take a skull of a baby and you wrap it, I get that. And we just have, there's a report in the Nephilim Hybrids book and also in Watchers 10 that Rick Woodward, one of our archaeologists that we use, did extensive testing and analyses on the foramen magnum. The foramen magnum is at the base of the skull where the spinal column attaches itself to. And he found out that the Paracas elongated skulls not only had the foramen magnum in a different place, located further back towards the occipital plate, the rear plate of the skull, but it was also smaller in a different shape than a normal human skull. Right. He therefore posits that is a genetic aberration because they all have the same, according to him, all have the same hole. Look, when we go back to Peru, and hopefully this is going to happen sooner than later, and we'll be able to take multiple DNA samples. And at that point, you see, until we get nuclear DNA, there's no way to know really what we're looking at. And the haplogroup is great. But until we get nuclear DNA, when we can start sequencing things like crazy, right, and see the genome, now we're off to the races. What's what I find interesting is that the information that we discovered fits our hypotheses that these people originated from the Middle East. And certainly the haplogroup, all 5 of them are showing that. 4 of them show European descent. The one, T2B, is in Mesopotamia, and that was the greatly elongated La Oroja skull. So, I mean, that's hard science, Derek. I mean, and I just want to back us up by saying this. When we gave the hair samples to the lab, all we said is, found on a mummy, it's ancient DNA. When we gave the sample up to the Lakehead University, we didn't show them what it looked like. We just said, here's some powder that we took from, paleo DNA. It's ancient. We're not sure how old it is. Here it is. And they tested it. Now, after the fact, then we started showing people, and they were going, oh, my gosh. That's when the oohs and ahs started. After the results came in, then we showed them what they were testing. They were all blown away. So, again, it's they have no dog in the hunt. They have no Nephilim dog in the hunt. I do. So, but I'm out of it. All I'm doing is telling you guys, and you can read that in the back of Nephilim Hybrid's book yourself. Right. You can read the entire report. And what was interesting is this skull, the La Oroja skull, was in a box with a Native American skull and a human skull. And it was all jostled up. And there was powder everywhere. You want to talk about cross-contamination?
Right.
Everywhere. And this was a major concern of ours. And that's why we sat down with Stephen Pietro at the Lakehead University and going, why the difference? And he said, well, all these samples that we took could be very easily contaminated. But the powder that you took, and the powder, the way we arrived with that, we had a tool, a Dremel tool. We went in with a conical shaped bit, and we just kept going into the skull, and that powder was gathered. We first went in a little bit, blew all that out with air, and then went in and got fresh material from the inside of the skull. That's what was tested. That came back T2B. Frat Pietro comes on the record and states unequivocally that that's the best chance of getting uncontaminated DNA, and it syncs with the hair samples that we got. And there's people go, oh, it's all contaminated. Nonsense. All the haplogroups are showing European, Middle Eastern descent.
Right.
That's not what we're looking at. And by the way, when they go through the testing of the hair, they clean the hair up. They decontaminate everything as much as possible. So is it conclusive? No, it's not. Does it point back to the Nephilim? Maybe. Still too early to tell. If we get nuclear DNA and it comes up, unknown aberrations in the genome, now we're really off to the races.
But the one thing it does for sure is it contradicts the official history, as you said, that
yes,
the natives of South America arrived from Asia via the land bridge.
Right.
Somehow, this particular resident of South America arrived there from an origin that is most likely in Europe or in Syria, Turkey, Mesopotamia. And we know that there were Indo-Europeans who were living in that region. They were called the Hurrians, the kingdom of Mari, which was about the time of Abraham and Jacob, Abraham through Jacob. This is the stuff I've been studying for the book that I'm working on. So it fits with what I'm working on. I'll tell you some more privately because I don't want to put it out yet until I do more research. But it certainly, at the very least, it contradicts the official history of how this part of the world, the New World, North and South America, were originally populated.
No, it does. Absolutely. Without doubt. And obviously more testing needs to be done. The Paracas people have always been very enigmatic. We know that. And this is why we are in the process, 3 years going on now, with trying to get permits to go into these museums and take real DNA samples. We've got a team of people ready to go. The paperwork has been submitted. We're just waiting for yes. If it's no, I don't know what we're going to do. Start the process all over again? I mean, all we're trying to do is get DNA samples. We're not like taking artifacts out. We're taking powder out. That's all we're doing.
Yeah. Well, we will await the next results, and we appreciate you being willing to come forward as soon as this information came to light to share the results of the testing on the Demon Fairy, the Winged Nightmare. Whoever did it certainly did an excellent job, and apparently they were well rewarded for their 40 hours of work.
Yeah, $10,000?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Thanks for having us on, and really appreciate it, Derek.
L.A. Marzulli is the host of the Watchers DVD series, the most recent Watchers 10 DNA, and author of the new book, Nephilim Hybrids. L.A., appreciate your work. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Derek. Take care.
You'll find L.A. Marzulli online, lamarzulli.net, and he blogs at lamarzulli.wordpress.com. Again, this is a disappointment, I think, for a lot of people who really hoped that this thing really was real. Obviously, most of us, when we first saw it, were skeptical, but the X-rays did not, at least the first set of X-rays, did not obviously reveal the fakery. It was only when the creature was taken from the alcohol solution and the skin peeled away that it became obvious that this was, in fact, a fraud, and that somebody spent a great deal of time and effort to convince Jaime Maussan, one of the most well-known researchers in the field of ufology and cryptozoology, that this thing was in fact real. Still have not learned exactly what creatures comprised this composite, this chimera, but money can be a powerful motivator, and certainly a lot of time and effort went into creating this thing. But we appreciate that L.A. Marzulli and Richard Shaw got in touch with us and our friends at Prophecy Watchers to advise us of this as soon as the information became available. You know, obviously a lot of people were impressed by the presentation that LA gave in Colorado Springs, but rather than let the information remain out there, the question remain out there as to whether this is real or not, LA and Richard are taking the bull by the horns, as it were, and making it known far and wide as quickly as possible that this thing is in fact a fake, a forgery, and somebody, somewhere in the past, made a nice little piece of change from Jaime Maussan for putting this thing together. Now, as L.A. pointed out during the interview, the attention that this creature attracted detracted from the significance of the DNA research that they featured in Watchers 10. If you've not seen the film, I do recommend it. And they did take care to make sure they were presenting an uncontaminated sample to the DNA labs at the skull from Peru that was obtained from the collection in Oregon. Most likely stems from, well, ancestry that originated in Europe or the Middle East, which, if nothing else, contradicts the paradigm that we've been taught, that South America was populated by people from Asia who crossed the land bridge into South America, through North America, and then down into South America. It appears that these folks, if they walked a very long way, but it's also very possible that they traveled by ocean. So interesting stuff. We appreciate their work, and again, we appreciate them getting out ahead of this story and making it clear that they have no intention, and neither do we or Prophecy Watchers, of misleading anybody as to the nature of this thing. So more testing needed to be done. This is the result of the more testing. We thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is SkyWatch TV. Hands on this artifact, the winged demon, the winged nightmare, the fair, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
What have you learned?
Well, first of all, let me do a little bit of backstory. You know, at the Prophecy Watchers conference that was pretty much sold out, standing room only, and you did a great presentation there also, Derek. Kudos to you, sir. And, you know, I stood on the stage and I spoke to a packed room of people and said, look, and I showed pictures of this thing. You know, here it is. And the best of our knowledge, you know, we believe that the thing is real. The fairy, the creature, the winged nightmare, whatever you want to call it, we believe it's real, and here's why. Right before that, and this is right before the release of Watchers 10 and also the book Nephilim Hybrids. This is about 4 months ago now, maybe 5 months ago. I did a sit-down, one-on-one with a veterinarian, local veterinarian, and all I had at the time were the X-rays that Jaime Maussan, who's the
angels waging war in the unseen realm. Global events fulfilling biblical prophecy. Eternal life. What lies beyond mortality? From analyzing the paranormal from a biblical worldview to the discussion of cutting-edge science and technology. Conspiracy. Discovery. Special investigative reports. Unafraid to explore the challenging issues facing humanity. Welcome to another edition of SkyWatch TV.
Sometimes when you're doing research into a controversial topic, the evidence points.
The owner of the creature had given me. Jaime Maussan has a huge program down in Mexico City. Millions of people watch his program. He's like a national celebrity down there, all on the whole UFO phenomenon. And that's how we discovered this thing. Jaime, we were in Jaime's office. He reached up behind his desk. There was a cabinet, opened the cabinet door, took down this jar, and in the jar is this thing. And we're looking at it going, oh my gosh, what, is it real? And it looked real. And I mean, it still looks real. I mean, we're just going, and you remember this thing was suspended in like a formaldehyde solution. The day we were there, we spoke to a geneticist who did testing on it. So we had all this backstory, and we sat on it for 3 years. But we still weren't sure because of the bird shot. We now know it's bird shot throughout this creature's body. What the heck is that doing there?
Right.
And, we were leaning, is it a hoax? Is it real? Or whatever. So this meeting that I had with the veterinarian, he looked at
in a direction you wish it hadn't or wish it didn't. But if you're honest about it, you present the evidence regardless of where it points. Welcome to SkyWatch TV. This is a web exclusive program, one that won't see on the network television broadcast, and we're bringing it to you in quite a hurry, bypassing our normal production time in order to get this to you right away. The other day, I got a phone call from L.A. Marzulli. He had something important to share, and so we very quickly set up a Skype connection in my rudimentary home studio in order to discuss the latest information that L.A. Marzulli and Richard Shaw, the producers of the Watchers DVD series, had just discovered about the so-called winged nightmare, the demon fairy, the creature that L.A. featured in its presentation at the recent Rocky Mountain International Prophecy Conference. So you and Richard Shaw have had several interesting days after getting your hand
at the x-rays. So now I've got a vet, a guy who's trained in anatomy, looking at the x-rays. And he goes, and we have the audio, it's in the film and in the transcripts in the book. And he goes, it sure looks real to me. And that's what we went with. That's what we went with.
Right.
Based on, and I'm not putting the onus on the vet here, but that's, you go to professionals because I don't know. I'm a researcher. I'm trying to bring what we're finding out to the folks, but we didn't know. And I said this at Prophecy Watchers up to the vet. My hoax meter needle was like over here on the hoax side, and when the vet weighed in, it moved over. Okay, and that's why we went with it.
Right.
So, and I also stated in the book, in the Prophecy Watchers article, and many performances or radio shows that we've done,